Welcome, everybody, to the Church of Doom. This is my RPG channel. At one point in time, it was a Dungeons and Dragons channel, but over the past few years, it has evolved more into just a place where I can kind of just ramble about whatever cool RPG adjacent creative idea I've got going on. So if you play RPGs, then you're going to get, hopefully, a lot of cool inspiration out of today's little sermon. And if you don't play RPGs, then you probably already left this video, but if you're still watching, then an RPG is a role-playing game. If you've watched Stranger Things, then you probably already kind of know what I'm talking about, and I don't need to over-explain what an RPG is. Let's just jump into today's sermon, right? So we're talking about Alien Romulus. I saw this like 2 nights ago with my dad, and it, first of all, awesome movie. So good. It's like Dune. To me, at least, it's similar to Dune, where you leave it feeling like, wow, people really actually tried. People wanted this movie to be good. They didn't just phone it in like Marvel movies and so much of what's out there. It's not even just Marvel. It's everything, right? Everything is just bleh. Like it feels like the people who made it didn't really care about it. And so that's one part of why Alien is so good. And I think that's part of why we like our RPGs, right? Because it doesn't happen if we don't make it happen. So there's a lot of reward with that. But anyways, the whole time though I was watching Alien, I just was thinking, oh, that would make for a cool encounter. Ooh, that's a cool thing for a monster to be able to do. Or, oh, wow, what a fun idea for a one-shot. And so as soon as we got out of the movie, I sat in the car and I just wrote up a D10 list. It was a D12 list, but 2 of the ideas were kind of lame, so I cut them. But a D10 list of things you can steal from the movie and use in your RPG or your world building or whatever it is. And even if you don't play sci-fi, if it's all fantasy for you, then I talk about these ideas in both contexts. I kind of introduce it, how it was used in the sci-fi movie version, and then I share how I kind of thought of like, ooh, maybe this is how you could do it in a D&D sort of scenario. So don't click out just because you're like, man, I don't care about sci-fi. You're going to get some value out of this. And then spoilers, obviously, big time spoilers for this. Or for the movie. And there are some awesome things to be spoiled, but this isn't like a review, and this also isn't going to be a perfect summary of the movie. In fact, I'll probably just confuse myself and a lot of you on the plot as I go through this. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's jump into this and let us pray. So Alien Romulus. Number one thing, well, not number one, but the first thing that I thought was really cool was the silence. So the most terrifying scenes are the most quiet, but the most terrifying encounters are the most lethal. So in Alien, no surprise, like silence or being quiet is a huge part of what makes the movie so scary. It's like no one can hear you scream in space, or is it no one can hear you scream? Yeah, it's in space. That's the tagline of the movie. So I'm not making any crazy statement there, and I'm also not blowing anybody's mind to be like, ooh, when the party is sneaking through the dragon's lair, they need to be quiet or they're going to wake the dragon up, and that's bad. Now, in a movie, just watching that or watching another character do that can convey that sense of tension. I'm going to use the Hobbit book and sort of, I guess, the movie as the example here. I just don't want to even give credit to the movies, but when Bilbo is sneaking into Smaug's lair, it is suspenseful and there is tension up until the point that Smaug wakes up. And then he goes and destroys everything and like kills a bunch of people. And it's horrible. Granted, that happens after like Bilbo kind of stalls for time with a little bit of some charisma kind of shenanigans, right? But still, like the consequences are dire. And what happens, I think, when we try to translate that from a movie like Alien or The Hobbit to the table is we, as the friends of the people at the table, don't want to see them necessarily die. And so we kind of either pull back on the consequences or we don't even consider them to be a possibility in the first place. Like we don't even consider that the consequences can be dire for a failed check. So to bring this all back around to silence, so I don't get too far down a crazy side tangent here, if you're going to do an encounter where the party is sneaking through a place, you can't just describe it. If they fuck up, then they get, like, and they wake up the dragon, It's a deadly encounter. It's not, oh, well, now we're going to go into a skill check to see if you can escape the drag. I mean, I guess you could do that maybe if like it feels right, but if it feels like you're throwing your players a bone, or if it feels like you're pulling your punches when they fail the stealth check, then it's going to fall completely flat. There will be no tension. And also, as one last little note on this, even though I said I wanted to wrap it up, players like combat most of the time. So a failed stealth check, if all a failed stealth check means is, oh, yay, we get to go into combat, then how can you ever expect there to be fear? What instead you need there to be is a sense of dread in the players that if they fail this if they fail this stealth check, there's a combat. Because they know, like, we are not prepared for this fight, or oh my god, like this thing is probably going to kill us and we're going to have to flee, and can we even outrun this thing, right? That's what you need for there to be horror, and that sense of tension. That's point number one. Point number two, or number three, or the second thing that I thought was really cool, cocoon. So the company recovers a xenomorph drifting through space in an excreted cocoon that it forms around itself. This is kind of at the end of the first Aliens movie. It's like drifting through, it gets blasted out of the ship, right? And you kind of think it's dead. Well, now you learn, no, it put this cocoon around itself and the company found it in it. And so they start doing some experiments on it. And I thought, oh, that would be a cool encounter for a wizard's tower. Or that was my initial thought. That would be a cool encounter. You know, the party goes into the tower and they see the egg on the podium or in the laboratory. But then I was thinking more about the movie. I'm like, hold on, no. The company, this was top secret. It wasn't just top secret because they wanted to have the information for themselves. That was part of it, but it also was top secret because it was wrong. What they were doing with that xenomorph egg was wrong. And so in the context of a wizard's tower, you should hide it somewhere, or it's in the secret laboratory under the tower. And when the players have befriended this wizard and it's their most trusted ally, even still, that wizard never tells the party about this secret laboratory where they have this alien egg thing. And it doesn't have to be the alien from the movie. It can be a beholder egg or something. I guess they don't have eggs. A mind flayer egg. But they're doing something with it that they know they shouldn't. That would be really dramatic and very cool. And then it's not just another throwaway laboratory encounter that doesn't kind of mean anything except a chance of a combat. Number 3, passive world building. I really, really like this one. Walking through the slums of Jackson Star, I say you, but I more mean like the characters in the movie, overhear snippets of conversations between the other colony scum. And it's things that you would expect to hear from colony scum. I can't remember exact lines, but it's things kind of like I can't remember, but it's like where are we going to get the drugs? It's not that obvious, but that's the sense you get when these people are talking to each other. They're talking about like bad, shady things, and This is kind of similar to the silence one, where you got to be careful about how you go about it, because it doesn't just translate directly over. Because if you do what I think a lot of us instinctually would do in D&D, which is like as the party is making their way through the market, you call for a perception check to see if one of the characters overhears what the shady figures behind the booth are saying. But if you do it that way, what I think's going to happen is your players are going to 9 times out of 10 go, oh, this is a plot hook. We're supposed to, we're being told we heard this and we're kind of making these checks. And if there's a chance of failure, then that means there's something we could have missed out on. So oh no, right? But if instead you kind of do what they do in the movie, which is as the party's moving, you're just including some of these little snippets of dialogue in your description of the market, right? Like, as you know, if your description of the market is 5 sentences, then your second sentence is some sort of little bit of dialogue, but then you're right on to the next part of your description. You don't give the players time to make checks unless they want to. Then you can go back or you can pause and do that. But by just including it in the description, you're able to continue moving the story along, because you won't bring it to a grinding halt like so many of us, me basically every session still continues to do. But instead you can move it along and build a sense of the world. This is kind of a weird example of like you're telling, not showing. But I think in the context of an RPG, if you do it correctly, it can function the same as show, don't tell, I think. But let me know if you think I'm just trying to justify my own opinions here. Number 4, asteroid belt. The Renaissance Station will be destroyed, not just inaccessible. And the Renaissance Station is the name of the ship that the movie takes place on. And the name Alien Romulus, that comes into effect. I guess I should have maybe mentioned this at the beginning, but right. So the legend of Romulus and Remus, I think that sounds not right. But anyways, it's the myth of like the two twin boys who are left out in the wilderness, and they ended up being raised by a mother wolf, which my dad pointed out in the movie. He's like, oh, that's cool. It's like mother, like in the computer or the AI in the Alien universe is called mother, and then it's a mother wolf. That was really cool. Anyways, that's a side point. But yeah, wait, what was I even talking about? Hold on. What was I talking about? The asteroid belt, right? So the Renaissance Station has two parts. There's the Romulus half of the station, and then the Remus half of the station, or whatever it's called. I guess I didn't really need to explain it in that much detail, but you find out through some exposition at the beginning of the film that this abandoned space station is going to drift into the asteroid belt that is orbiting the planet, and it's going to be destroyed. And that was, I thought, like, what a cool timer for a dungeon. Because I think a lot of us have either heard of, I know I've shared this idea before of like, ooh, the dungeon only opens once every 100 years. Ooh, you know, or, oh, you need to escape the dungeon before it closes up on you. And that's like, I still think that that's really fun and you should still do that. But there's another kind of similar way to do it that is different that I think the movie did really well, which is when the timer is up for this dungeon, it's not just inaccessible. It's gone, right? It's destroyed. You can't just try again, or in the context of getting trapped in it, right? Like you're dead. If you are stuck inside this dungeon, when the timer runs out, you're a goner. And I actually did this in a Tomb of Annihilation campaign. It went down a really weird homebrew route where the party ended up in the bottom of a dungeon that was flooded with the bile of Asarak the Lich. In my version of the story, he was like eating the world, and so he was literally digesting it. And so the party like had to, they had gone there to recover something. I can't even remember necessarily what it was. And then they had to get it and flee as the bubbling bile of Asarak is flooding up this dungeon. And they knew that it was closing. Or no, they got to the top. I'm sorry, they got to the top and had kind of outpaced the bile a bit, and then discovered, oh shit, this is sealed from the inside. And there's the weird riddle puzzle we need to do. It was basically just an intelligence skill check. Because if you just leave a player's fate up to a riddle and it's like, give me the answer, like that sucks. So it was still the characters, their characters' stats could overcome this obstacle, but unfortunately they didn't. Spoiler alert. But so they get up there, they see that the dungeon is sealed, and they're needing to make this check, and they know if they fail, the bile is going to flood and digest them all. And I told them, meta, this is life or death here. I said it in a little more dramatic kind of way, not as just bluntly as I am right now, but that the players were on board and the tension was real, and that made it fun. The players want tension. If there is no tension, they're not gonna show up. And GMs, wow, I just keep going off on these side tangents. GMs like to bitch about players not showing up and there being these scheduling conflicts. Well, guess what? People schedule what they prioritize. And so if you're having people not showing up for your sessions, then maybe that's a little bit of a wake-up call that you could put in a little more of an effort. Are you passive in your game mastering, or are you active in your game mastering? Now let's reel it back into what we were talking about. What were we talking about? We were talking about the asteroid belt and that the Renaissance Station will be destroyed. It's not just inaccessible. And then I talked about, I made this note. Good thing I had this here. It's another cool idea. Think about the story of The Hobbit. How much different would it be if when Smaug wakes up, Or no, with there's the key. I'm going to combine a bunch of ideas here to just get my point across, right? How much different would it be if when Smog woke up, or if the dwarves failed to get into the mountain with the key and the moon riddle thing? If in either instance they failed, it meant that the whole mountain would erupt with Smog's rage and the kingdom of the dwarves would be destroyed. That is a lot different than, shit, well, I guess we'll just wait another 100 years, or we'll wait until the next moon or whatever. Like, that, those are two very different scenarios, and it's similar to Silence, where one of those has tension and one of those does not, at the table at least. At the table, the players kind of don't care if they have to wait 100 years because that can just happen through a narration. But you can't just narrate away the dungeon exploding and you can't go back to explore it and recover the relic or your fallen companion. And yeah, so I hope I hope that all made sense. I went off in a bunch of different points there, but it was one that I thought was really, really cool for a timer in your game. And if you're kind of curious what a timer is, or if you've never heard of that, then I'm a little surprised. You must be maybe new to the hobby, because this is something that Runehammer introduced a while ago that I've seen for the most part pretty widely adopted. Like, people seem to know what it is, but basically you roll a D4 or a D6, and that's like, in this many rounds, you're kind of counting down from whatever you roll, something terrible will happen. And that could be reinforcements show up. It could be the room fills with bile. So that's what a timer is. It's a really fun mechanic. Go look it up and learn more about it. Let's go on to point number 5 here. So door jams. Nearly all of the ship's inner doors are partially jammed or transparent in some way, like they have glass or something like that, because it's a space laboratory ship, right? So, but going on to say, not every door is made of solid, or not every door is solid and needs to be made of wood or steel, or wood and metal and stone. So, my realization as I was kind of thinking about, there's a lot of scenes where the doors are like partially open and the characters can like reach their arms through, right? They're like, take my hand, oh my God. It's like that kind of stuff. Or they're passing things between the door. It just made me realize, oh my God, I never use portcullises. It's always just a door, a wooden or stone door that either you just open normally or it's going to slide up on its own. I can't really think of a time that I actually designed and I put the conscious thought in of like, ooh, this door is you can kind of get through it. Like, you could reach through it, but you can't get all the way through it, which is crazy that I've never done that. I've heard the idea. I've even talked about that idea of like using portcullises and traps and stuff before, but I have never actually used a portcullis. And seeing the characters in the movie like not able to escape certain death, and the other people, their companions, are having to watch them, basically like watching death approach behind them, and then like, do the what do they call it's not a face hugger, that's the little sculling thing, that just their second mouth, right? Kill them. Imagine that in your dungeon, where the player who failed their dexterity save to slide under the portcullis, instead like they slam into it and the rest of the party is on the other side and can get out. And this one is like, wait, come back, help, help, help. And they're reaching through and the party sees the hook horror, kind of making the tapping sounds and emerging out of the darkness. And the party's just screaming as it's lifting its hook up to bring it down and cave in the back of this character's skull. Of course, you don't make it an instant death thing. Well, I mean, you know what? I'm going to take that back, because I think that's a 5e impulse, or a Dungeons and Dragons specific impulse of, oh, you can't just kill a character. You can't just do that. You can't just roll a dice and say that boulders fall and kill everybody. You can't do that. But what you can do is inform your players that they are going into a deadly skill challenge, and if they can't come up with some sort of creative way to use their character's inventory and skills and other resources to get out of this situation in X amount of successful skill checks, before they reach a certain number of failures, they're gonna die. That is very different than just throwing a boulder down from the side of a cliff and killing your players. Another side tangent. The Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition DM screen, I promise this isn't going to just be a bitching about D&D 5e video, I promise. That might be a promise I break, but I remember when I got the DM screen, there was a random encounter table, I think, and one of them said, or maybe it was talking about damage types, I don't remember, but either way, there was a table, and on it you could roll boulders fall and kill everybody. And even all those years ago, when my undeveloped game master brain, which did all of the things you shouldn't do, like railroad and throw unbeatable villains at the party, even though I did all of those things, I still thought like, oh, that's stupid. Like, why would you do that? Like, why? That doesn't sound fun. Why would anybody want to show up and have their character just killed by a thing they had no say over? And I guess I didn't think about it in that context back then, but the point being, a random death sucks, but a foreshadowed death is very dramatic and very interesting, and portcullises can be a cool way to do that. Idea number 6, the chest burster. The heroes will watch themselves birth monsters. It was kind of my idea with this. And so werewolves aren't superheroes. In Alien, when they get infected and they get the egg planted inside of them, and in this movie, right, they put the light up and they see this thing inside of them like starting to break through. They aren't like, oh, cool, I have an alien parasite. Like, I'm going to have superpowers. But that's what happens in D&D. It's hilarious. Like, it's without fail, like every time the idea of, or the concept of a werewolf gets brought up or mentioned in a campaign, at least one player is like, how do I get, like, where is it? Like, how do I get it? I want to be a werewolf. That sounds really cool. And as the GM, sometimes at least for me, I'm like, no, you're not supposed to be excited. You're supposed to be scared, or you're supposed to want to go kill this thing. You're not supposed to go and hold your hand out and be like, come on, bite me. Come on, give me your ability so then I can kill you and then I can be the werewolf. You want it to be bad. You need to emphasize that. And there's a bunch of ways you can do that. And in my opinion, I think when a character gets infected with lycanthropy, you are now entering into territory in a game where you can start to say like, hey, you're going to lose agency here unless you do something about this. Like, you're not going to just get to play a werewolf. I think that's the better way to do it than being like, oh, well, okay, let's figure out how you can still be your preferred character without any flaws, but also have the abilities of a werewolf. That is so lame. And so you can emphasize the feeling of powerlessness and fear, which is what you're ultimately trying to do here. You're not just trying to be a dick and curse them or mutate them into something so that you can play their character. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to make them scared of an outcome. Then so like I said, you can make it an agency thing, but you got to warn them about it. Or you can do the body horror thing where the players either see somebody else transform into a werewolf, and it isn't just they grow hair and they're scary. It's their teeth begin to elongate and crack and fracture out of their jaw because the teeth are growing bigger than the jaw can as their canines are beginning to develop, and their tongue kind of flops out and slobbers, but it's foaming with blood, right? Just that alone is like, terrifying. I don't want any of that to happen to my character. So, and what can be cool too is if you have players that are like, oh, hell yeah, I want to be a werewolf, then maybe let them be a little excited, and then when they encounter the werewolf, it's like, like, how are we feeling about the werewolf thing, guys, right? So, and if I just looked down at my mic weird, it's because I was like, I hope this wasn't muted the whole time. I just had that anxious thought, but good news is it's not blinking, so we're good. But that's the chest burster idea. So if you're going to do something like a werewolf bite or is it slod? Slod, I think, is how I think the I is silent. But those like big frog alien things in D&D that infect you with a tadpole, it's just alien, but in frog form. That needs to be a terrifying transformation as well. It can take a lot of different forms. You can reskin it however you want, but don't make it cool. Or at least don't make it cooler than it is bad. Number 7 was don't shoot. So killing the aliens will release acid blood, which could destroy the ship. And my parenthesis idea here is dragon's blood is lava. So in the movie, I don't remember it ever being like this explicitly said in other alien movies, although I haven't watched them in a while. But in this one, they're like, don't shoot the alien because the acid is going to melt the ship and it'll depressurize the ship. I think they say that like 3 times, which was kind of annoying. But the idea was really cool that, yeah, we can't just kill this thing that's trying to kill us because it's going to melt. It can melt all the way through and suck us out into space, which is cool. It's interesting because that is also how they kill the alien in this movie and other ones. But at the same time, they don't want to do it. So what if when the party is fighting a dragon, it doesn't have to be an ancient dragon. It could be a young dragon or even a wormling, or it could be whatever monster you want. But what if when it bleeds, it spills out lava that is going to catch things on fire or melt the floor out from under the players? Now they can't kill this thing the way that they have solved every other problem in the campaign, which is you beat it to death or you cut it open. They've got to figure something else out. And this is where players will start to use the polymorph spells or the spell scrolls and things that they never use otherwise until you, right? This happens to a lot of us, I think. And I'm kind of just having this realization, so maybe I'm going to be way off here, but I think like a lot of times where we are taught to build up our villain to the final encounter and we don't introduce them early enough. We wait until it's way far into the campaign. And then the party has amassed all of these resources that they've never had to use. And what do? They polymorph your Kraken into a turtle or something like that. And you're like, fuck, like, okay, damn it. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to figure this out somewhat. Like you don't want to snuff out their creative problem solving because that's pretty creative. But so how do you prevent that sort of thing though? You put them in situations where they kind of have to. I'm losing the idea here. What the hell was I talking about? Don't shoot. Killing the aliens releases acid blood, which could destroy the ship. Dragon's blood is all. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So you just throw several of those types of threats. It's not the enemy at the very end of the campaign has acid blood or lava blood. It is multiple enemies have multiple iterations of this type of mechanic, so that the players have to overcome it several times. The point here was not to teach you how to get to use a villain without it being polymorphed. That kind of came out of left field. The point here was having the act of harming or killing the monster is also at odds with the party's goal is very, very cool. Number 8, floating acid. This is going to be very kind of similar, but I'll make this one quick here. So there's a part in the movie where they do inevitably shoot a bunch of the aliens, but they're in zero gravity. So the acid is floating around in this room that they then realize like we have to get to the other side of. And so in the context of D&D, what is that? The party is walking down maybe a noble's palace, could be a ruined palace, or it could be a still working one, and this is just a clever trap that they have in it. But maybe there's 2 fountains that run in the floor along this walkway, and when the trap is triggered, the gravity is reversed or goes 0G, and all of the acid maybe they are led to believe it's water in a fountain, but it's acid. It floats up into the room, and the party has to now have a fight in here, or they need to navigate the room somehow while acid is drifting around in the room. And you could handle it how I would probably. There's 2 ways I'm thinking of right now that you could do that mechanically. Either one is every round you're just having the characters make dex saves to avoid, like at the beginning of their turn, they just have to make a dex save to avoid it. That's probably the easiest way to do it and avoids the least amount of. It's the fairest, I guess. The other way you could do it, though, is you drop a few kind of like acid minis or little tokens to represent big blobs of acid that are drifting through the room, and you just move them in a random direction. That is, I think, more dynamic, and it's cool, but it's going to take more time. You're going to be rolling these dice and counting out the spaces, and you're going to be needing to figure out which direction the dice is pointing and things like that. And it's all of that will eat into the combat time. So I think you got to kind of know your group and pick whichever one you want to do. But what was the? Oh yeah, so just use that exact idea though. Just do the floating acid trap thing. Number 9, exploding ship. So I already talked about how at the beginning they say like the ship is going to hit this asteroid belt and blow up. But at the end, what was cool is it hits the asteroid belt, and I was surprised because I was like, oh no, like are they all gonna die right now? But no, the ship like begins to explode in sections, and maybe that's only because it's in outer space. That's the only reason that happens. And if that were down here on Earth, it would like just instantly all explode a lot faster. But I was watching that as the characters in the movie are still like running around this space station trying to escape it while it is blowing up. But what's cool is it's not like a chain reaction that is moving up the ship necessarily. It is that it's almost like sandpaper. The asteroid belt is working like sandpaper as it's grinding this ship down that is drifting into it. It was really, really cool visually. But for a dungeon, what if I'm getting a call. But anyways, we were talking about how the ship was blowing up in sections, and that would work really cool for a dungeon. And while I was kind of getting ready to film again, I realized, oh shoot, I kind of already started touching on this in the it was like point number 3 or something when I was talking, or number 4, when I was saying I'd done that dungeon that had the bile that was working its way up the dungeon. That also kind of works with this one where the ship, it was blowing up in segments. So what if your dungeon started getting removed in sections? Or wait, is this just the same thing? No, this is a different point. Because, wait. Yeah, no, this is a different point. Because number 4 was saying, like, the dungeon just is not going to be accessible anymore, not just sealed. Number 9, I'm saying, yeah, it's going to blow up and not be accessible. But it's not just going to be one giant explosion and it's game over. It's like, it's kind of like a skill challenge in that way where one failure doesn't mean the entire thing is done for. The dungeon is doomed, but if you can get up and you just have to outrun this explosion and you're gonna be okay. Maybe you don't run up and find the exit is sealed like my players did, but they know that we've got to outrun this explosion. We still have a chance to get out, right? When the dungeon's collapsing, everybody doesn't just die right away. There's the cool get out of here sequence. And then you throw whatever you want at the players as they're fleeing. Maybe the alien is still hunting them as they're trying to escape this place, which is exactly what happened in the end of the Alien movie, right? Which I guess I didn't even make a point about how cool the what do they call it? The not the spawn, they gave it a really cool name and I wish I could remember it. But the half human, half alien cool hybrid at xenomorph at the end had like a human face, but it was all elongated or whatever. Like, that was so cool. That design was awesome. I just wanted to point it out now and just say, like, probably, I think I honestly, I might like that more than the original Alien design, which is probably just me being really excited about the movie and overstating things, but something about being able to see it do its creepy smile and stuff. I was like, ooh, like, that's extra creepy. And the fact that it had 2 eyes, not just the one big giant phallic looking one, right? It was so cool. Loved the design. Just wanted to give that props here. But anyways, yeah, that got brought up because it died at the end when it was hunting her and it was exploding at the same time. Number 10, though, the very last thing that I left that movie just being like, wow, that was awesome, was the symbolism that happened. And there were a couple that I noticed here. So one was, especially in the beginning, you kind of don't even really see it anymore in the later half of the movie, but they're building up to the alien, there are a lot of shots I noticed of space ports and spaceships, like sealing latches, and not just doors closing, but like the clamping, that's a good word for it. There was a lot of clamping shots of the ship docking and sealing itself in and things like that. And for me, at least, I was like really getting the sense that they were building up to the face hugger scene. We all knew it was coming. We all knew that there was going to be this little spidery alien thing that jumped on somebody's face and put an egg inside them, right? But so how do you make that scary again? You foreshadow it, and you can do that through your descriptions in your dungeon. Let me give you an example. And I'm gonna, let's see if we can do something that isn't just a face hugger constricting thing. Like if you had a dungeon about, here's a good one. Okay, I've got it. If you were gonna do a fire dungeon, you don't just have there be fire when the party gets inside and there's the fire elemental, right? You have there be fire as the party comes across charred, blackened corpses and skeletons of the other adventuring party they met in town the day before. They were already on their way to this dungeon, and the party was going to leave the day after for whatever reason, right? They find their corpses, and it's like Anakin Skywalker, just pink and black, just completely burned and dead. Or maybe if there were like 6 of them, 1d6 of them are still clinging to life, but in this like charred, burnt marshmallow state. That would be more dramatic than just, oh, they're all dead. But that is showing that there is fire, or that's building up to the fire. The players might already know that the dungeon is where the fire elemental or the fire genie lives. So you need to start emphasizing how scary and deadly the fire is early, like they did with, I think, the clamping of the doors. Another thing they did was they had a crucified xenomorph, which maybe that was in the original, I can't remember, but there was this awesome shot where it looks up at the ceiling where acid has melted through, and a partially melted xenomorph skeleton is kind of caught in the rafters, and it's hanging just like a crucifixion. And I was like, oh my god, that is such a cool... it's symbolism. That's not... I mean, maybe it was foreshadowing to, I guess, something, but I mostly just saw it as cool symbolism of, yeah, the xenomorph is this like birth and rebirth, and it's this like perfect organism kind of thing. It's got a lot of parallels to Jesus in that way, and seeing it so outright was awesome on the screen. And so you could do something similar. I guess maybe my example previously is, it also kind of works with this one, where you just put the theme like right in front of the players, very transparently. Like, you're going to a fire dungeon. Here is somebody who was burned to death. How could you do that a little more subtly, though? You could do... Okay, so if the here's how you could maybe do it. If the party is going to that same dungeon where the fire genie is, maybe instead of finding charred bodies, they find small burnt effigies depicting this god, left by members of their cult. What would be cool is maybe there's effigies left by their faith in town and this weird subcult that is starting up to worship this fire god. And the players find a few of these effigies kind of left along the trail to this dungeon that these people have left. There's nothing terrifying about them. There's nothing even evil about them. They're not cursed or anything. They're just, you don't describe them in a sinister way. They're just burnt effigies. And the party is kind of left to infer what they will from that. And that is also cool, and that is fun symbolism. And the last one, and this was my favorite because I feel like I noticed it, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it yet, so first, maybe that would be cool. This isn't a movie review channel though, so who really cares? But I noticed Andy, who is the cyborg in the movie, or the... Right? Cyborg? Is that what they call him? Why does that name sound weird? What? Artificial person is what they prefer to be called, right? But the artificial person, when he gets hit really hard, or if he takes damage, he kind of like starts to glitch, right? And he freezes up and he can't move, and it kind of looks like he's having a seizure. I noticed something that when he kind of striked a really interesting pose. His head kind of like shoots up, his eyes roll back, and his hands kind of like came up in this very strange... It was a weird hand position where I was like, huh, that seems intentional. And then I thought back to something I'd seen earlier in the movie, which was this. We saw this symbol as they were kind of explaining the lore of the ship and why it was named the Romulus station. And look at what these two are doing. That is the pose that Andy was in. And I don't know if that was an actor's choice or a director's choice, but whoever it was enlightened. That is so good. So cool. And it's not like a one for one. It's not perfect, but it's so similar that when you see it, you're like, whoa. And then when I told my dad about it, that's when he connected the dot of, oh, and it's like Mother, right? Andy is drinking from Mother, who created him, but it's not his real mom. He's this artificial thing. And so, and I feel like that's a perfect point to end on. That when he and I noted that together, we were like, what an awesome movie. And if you can do something similar like that in your session, your players are going to have the same feeling. I don't think I can give you an example like I did with the other two for this last one, because it was just, I'm thinking it was an actor's choice. It just felt like one of those things that, well, no, maybe it was a director's choice. Either way, though, I feel like you can't plan that sort of thing, or at least not like session one going into the encounter. It's something that's going to pop into your head at some point during the session, and you're going to be like, ooh, that's going to be some cool symbolism. So this one, I feel like you're going to stumble across it yourself, and you're going to feel really cool when that happens. So Yeah, those were the 10 things from Alien Romulus that I think you could use in any of your fantasy world building RPG pursuits. A couple quick things here at the end. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to leave your tithing by liking and leaving a comment. And then I also wanted to show you a couple cool things. Now, I had to put this in a separate tab because if it was showing up here at the top, you would think that it was a porn tab that I had forgotten to close, and it was not. It is the Fuck Me Sharp Edge dice set Kickstarter from Only Crits, who I am working with to develop the Church of Doom dice that's going to release probably next year now at this point. Definitely next year at this point. But that's not their fault. That's me just having a bunch of other things going on, like getting married in 2 weeks, which I'm very excited about. But anyways, they've got this Kickstarter going on. Already way past their funding goal, and they've got a bunch of funny things on there. You know, a lot of them say like "fuck me," but my favorite is sorry, they've got a lot that say "fuck you" or just "fuck," which is hilarious. But I like the "fuck me" of just like fuck me. Like that is one where I'm like, that's actually like I would roll this and it wouldn't feel too cringe. Sometimes I feel like I see dice kind of like this and they're cringe, but I feel like the Only Crits did a really good job with these ones. I like them, and I wouldn't feel too weird rolling them. So you should definitely go check it out at least. You know, times are tight with the economy. In this economy, it's kind of hard to back Kickstarters, but I felt like this one was one I want to plug, and I really like Only Crits. I think that they make a good product, and the people I've been working with are great, and so they've got my support. If you're interested in backing this project, I do have an affiliate link. I'll put that down in the description, and you can go get me a little bit of a throwback, which would be cool. So go check that out. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you here was, let's actually move this up here. The other thing I wanted to plug is Crusade. They make, if you watch any video that I've ever made, which actually I guess you can't now because I've deleted so many of them, but I have worn Crusade t-shirts almost every day for the past year. Like this, I have like, my closet is Crusade for the most part. And then a couple cool shirts from Vans. And then that's about it. I really, really, really like their shirts. And similar, just like the dice set, they're not cringe. They're really just cool looking. When Aaron and I were on our trip over for kind of our early honeymoon, I was wearing them over in Europe, and I was getting a lot of looks, and some of the looks were like, what a weird tourist to be wearing that shirt, but most of them were like, that's a really cool shirt. Where did you get that? And I've actually had people ask that. And so if you also like these shirts and kind of, if you want to lift my style, you can get your stuff from Crusade's site. I've got an affiliate link for that as well in the description. And they just did a recent merch drop, which is, well, of course, I'm not wearing the new one today when I record this video. But, I mean, the whole fit, basically, is the shorts, Crusade, the shirt, Crusade, the Crocs. But hey, if Crusade ever releases some Crocs, or if we can maybe get some like Church of Doom Crocs, that would be really cool. But yeah, go snag yourself some cool shirts and give me a little tithing in return there. That's about it. The Church of Doom has a Patreon. You can go check that out. I've got like almost 800 posts or something. Or no, that's members. I have I think over 800 posts or something. There's so much on there. Like today I did a release of the Angel, and it was the spread of all the Angel random tables that's going to be in my Monster Psalms book. The Patients just got that a couple months early. And then there's all kinds of other things that are going to be coming out over the next couple weeks that I'm really excited about, but I'm not going to spoil it quite yet. I want you to have to see it for yourself. So that's all for me today. This has been quite a rambly video. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Love y'all. And we say these things in their unholy names. Amen. Oh, wait, what the? I've been looking at this freaking light over here thinking that was the camera.